Hey parents, a quick note before we start today's story. Every month, Animal Stories for Kids podcast will still bring you 2 free regular episodes to enjoy with your kids. But if your child loves following our animals in alphabetical order and is always asking for more, I've created a special subscriber tier just for your family. When you subscribe through Supercast, you'll get an extra episode every month, plus early access to new stories before they're released on the main feed. It's a simple way to support the show's growth and keep your little animal lover stocked with calm, screen-free stories. You can find the link to subscribe in the show notes. Now let's settle in. Today's animal adventure is about to begin. Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was a bearded dragon named Jarly. Jarly the bearded dragon lived on a sun-warmed sandstone outcrop where the air shimmered with heat and cicadas droned in waves, and he spent most of his days puffing his black beard at everything that moved, head bobbing at shadows, and trying very hard to look fierce. He darkened his beard at passing magpies. He stood tall on all 4 legs when a blue-tongued skink wandered by. He even puffed up at his own reflection in a puddle after a rare rain. The truth, which Jarly guarded like a secret treasure, was this. Underneath all that bluster, he was a lizard who loved to do slow, silly arm circles, bask upside down on acacia branches with his legs dangling in the air, and chase cicadas in a way that looked less like hunting and more like dancing. And he was terrified someone would find out. But one morning, a family of younger bearded dragons moved onto the rock cluster just downhill from Jarly's territory. They were loud. They were playful. They were utterly, completely unserious. They chased each other's tails in circles. They tumbled off logs. They arm-waved at butterflies, at beetles, at absolutely nothing at all. Jarly the bearded dragon watched them from his high outcrop, his heart sinking like a stone dropped into the sand. If they came up here, they would see him up close. They would realize he wasn't the tough, intimidating dragon he pretended to be. They would discover he was just as silly as they were. And so, Jarly made a decision. He would act even tougher, keep them far away, and never, ever let his guard down. The next morning, when the young dragons ventured toward his rock, Jarly launched into his most dramatic performance yet. He puffed his beard to maximum blackness until his throat looked like a storm cloud. He stood tall on all 4 legs, even though it made his shoulders ache, and he head bobbed so aggressively that he nearly lost his balance and toppled forward off his perch. The young dragons stopped. They tilted their heads. One of them lifted its arm and waved in a slow, gentle circle. Then they all went back to playing. Jarly thought it was working. He looked fierce. He looked intimidating. He looked, according to the evidence of his own beard, like a dragon no one would dare approach. What he actually looked like was a very angry, beard-shaped balloon. Days passed. Jarly the bearded dragon kept up his act, puffing and bobbing every time the young dragons came near. But it was exhausting. His throat was sore from all that darkening. His legs trembled from standing tall. He couldn't remember the last time he'd basked upside down, legs dangling in that perfectly weird pose he loved. He hadn't chased a single cicada in over a week. And from his high rock, he watched the young dragons play. They arm-waved at each other in slow, friendly spirals. They flopped into ridiculous basking positions, bellies to the sun, legs sticking out at odd angles. They tumbled and chased and looked completely unbothered by how silly they appeared. And Charlie felt something ache deep inside his chest, something that had nothing to do with sore muscles. He was lonely. He wanted to wave his arms in slow circles. He wanted to bask upside down. He wanted to join them. But he'd been the tough dragon for so long, he didn't know how to stop. And underneath everything, coiled tight like a snake in his belly, was the fear, if I show them who I really am, they'll laugh at me. One scorching afternoon, when the sun turned the sandstone super hot and the air tasted like eucalyptus and dust, the smallest young dragon started climbing toward Charlie's outcrop. Charlie's beard flared black. He stood tall. He head bobbed once, twice, 3 times, the most intimidating display he could muster up. The young dragon stopped halfway up the rock. It looked at Charlie with calm, dark eyes, and then, very slowly, it lifted one arm and waved, a gentle circle that said, "I'm not a threat. I'm friendly." Charlie the bearded dragon froze. He wanted to wave back. He wanted it so badly his arm trembled. But instead, he puffed his beard one last time, turned his back, and walked to the far side of his rock. He settled into his basking spot, alone, and closed his eyes against the glare. Well, he thought, that's that, I guess. He was the tough dragon now. That's all he'd ever been. The silliness was gone, and he was the one who chased it away. But just then, the smallest dragon didn't leave. It climbed all the way up. Charlie heard the soft scrabble of claws on sandstone. He heard breathing that wasn't his own. And when he opened his eyes, the young dragon was right beside him, flipping upside down on the low acacia branch near his spot, legs dangling in the air in the exact ridiculous pose Charlie loved but never let himself do anymore. The young dragon looked at him and waved. Not in submission, in invitation. Charlie the bearded dragon stared. His heart hammered against his ribs. And slowly, very slowly, his beard faded from storm cloud black to pale. He lifted one arm and waved. The young bearded dragon's eyes brightened. It waved back, its whole arm spiraling in a joyful circle. And suddenly, the other young bearded dragons were scrambling up the rock. 5 of them, then 6, then 7, flopping into silly basking poses, waving their arms in slow, fun spirals. And Charlie the bearded dragon realized something that made his chest feel warm and wide. They had never been judging him. They'd been waiting for him to join them. The arm wave wasn't weakness. It was the way bearded dragon said, "I see you, and you're safe with me." Charlie flipped upside down on his branch, legs dangling. He waved his arm in a slow, ridiculous circle. And all around him, the young dragons waved back. From that day on, Charlie still puffed his beard when real danger came near. At a hawk's shadow cutting across the rock, a snake sliding through the grass, but he never again mistook silliness for weakness. He basked upside down with the young dragons, legs dangling in ways that made no sense at all. He chased cicadas in patterns that looked more like dancing than hunting. He waved his arm in slow, glorious circles. and every single time, another bearded dragon waved back. And he always knew that the bravest thing a bearded dragon could do wasn't to puff up and look tough. It was to wave and let someone see who you really are. And the bearded dragon lived happily ever after. The end. Bearded dragons are reptiles in the genus Pogona, which means beard in Latin, named for the spiky throat pouch they puff up when threatened or displaying dominance. There are several species of bearded dragons, but the most common is the central bearded dragon, Pogona vidiceps. They belong to the family Agamidae, which includes over 400 species of lizards found across Africa, Asia, and Australia. A bearded dragon can grow between 16 and 24 inches, with roughly half of that length being their tails. Their bodies are covered in rough, spiny scales that feel like sandpaper, and they have a throat pouch lined with spiky scales that they can puff out and darken to black when they're scared, angry, or trying to impress other bearded dragons. Their coloring ranges from tan and brown to gold and reddish orange, helping them blend into the dry, rocky landscapes where they live. They have strong clawed feet, perfect for climbing rocks and trees. Bearded dragons are native to the arid and semi-arid regions of Central Australia, living in deserts, scrublands, and open woodlands where temperatures can be above 100 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. They can be found basking on rocks, fence posts, or low tree branches in the morning sun, warming their bodies after the cool desert night. Because they're cold-blooded, which means they can't warm up their own body by themselves, they rely on outside heat sources, like the sun, to stay active and healthy. Bearded dragons are omnivores, which means they eat both plants and animals. Their diet includes insects like crickets, beetles, and ants, as well as flowers, fruits, and leafy greens. They're the sit-and-wait kind of predators, meaning they often stay very still and then lunge forward to snatch prey with their quick tongues. When they're threatened, bearded dragons use several defenses. They puff up their beards, open their mouths wide to look bigger, and sometimes hiss. One of the most interesting behaviors bearded dragons display is arm waving. They lift one front leg and move it in a slow circular motion, which scientists believe is a sign of submission or a friendly greeting to other dragons. It's their way of saying, "I'm not a threat," or "I recognize you're in charge here." Another interesting behavior is head bobbing, which is often used by males to show dominance or during courtship when finding a mate. Faster, more aggressive bobs usually mean back off, while slower bobs can be part of their mating behavior. Bearded dragons have a third eye on the top of their heads called a parietal eye. It can't see images like their regular eyes, but it can detect light and shadows, helping them sense predators like birds flying overhead. This hidden eye gives them an extra layer of protection in the wide open spaces where they live, watching the sky even when they're looking at the ground. Have you seen a real-life bearded dragon before? If you have, where did you see it? Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. Until next time, bye! If your child loves imaginative stories, I'd love to share my picture book, What Else Should I Eat? It's about a girl who's hungry and goes on a whimsical journey through a magical land of food, trying different kinds of food and exploring how they look, taste, feel, and smell. It's a fun way to show kids that eating different kinds of food can be exciting. The book is perfect for ages 3 to 6, and older kids enjoy it too. You can find What Else Should I Eat on Amazon and other online bookstores. Find all the details in the show notes.